Hey, everyone.
Hi,
Hey,
Chris.
Chris.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Did you get the Charleston shoes yet?
Oh, no, Chris, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
Fake news.
Yeah, all right.
Is there a shortage on them? Is that what you're saying?
It's a supply chain issue.
Aren't they a local company? Or are they not local anymore?
Yeah, logo. I had the small Charleston, but I didn't have the big.
Yes, it's the
Okay.
big ones.
The big one.
I should have specified, Dan. My apologies.
Okay. I must say, I was very impressed with the meeting last week. It was a great turnout.
It was a good turnout.
I thought it was great. Everybody did well.
Yeah, we thought the dialogue was good. The questions that were asked there were some new thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, I was happy to see that.
Yeah, and some good dialogue. So still waiting for Jeremy and Sarah and Liz, right?
Yeah. Is Jay on vacation or is still on
I
vacation?
don't know. I didn't hear back from him, so I'm not too sure.
I think he's supposed to be back this week. So Jay too, yeah.
He's probably biking or walking back, so it'll be a while.
Here's Bernie, I'll let him in.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Bernie.
Oh, Bernie.
Bernie, everybody's here except for Jay, Liz, and Sarah. So you have a
Okay.
quorum if you want to call to order.
Might as well get started. Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late. Our internal Zoom software wasn't cooperating today, so they reinstalled it, but then now my Zoom meetings only open our internal software, so anyway, I had to sort through that. Let's see. Let's just get to the agenda. And I think the agenda is pretty straightforward tonight. Just review what we heard last week. And yeah, make any changes, and that's about it. I think the minutes, I've reviewed most of the minutes from the event. Looks like we have a couple of places for fill-ins. I think the first one I saw was on the second page. I think it was Angelo Colucci. I looked back on his emails from the, I think it was the January 11th meeting, COLUCCI. I don't know if, do we want to,
Bernie, are you talking about the January 25th minutes or the minutes from the forum?
the forum?
Okay, that's what I thought. I would actually suggest that Park save the minutes from January 25th till the end of the meeting, since there's a
Okay.
bunch of staff here on the call to talk about the actual recommendations.
Okay. Okay, do we want to, are you suggesting then that we hear from staff about any additional input we should have for the recommendations?
So yes, but I think that it would be good first if we could just highlight for staff, like the things that are being proposed from Park that are different from the things that were proposed by staff a couple of years ago, and then just work through those. There are a lot of things overlap, but there are some things that are slightly different.
So Andrew, do you
And-
want to show us your trusty spreadsheet, which gives us the difference? Hello, Jay?
If there's an issue that came up last week that may change our proposal, do we want to talk about that when we get there? To that specific space, like Sanborn Street, the apartment house in Sanborn was something I wanted to talk about.
I think that makes sense personally.
Mhm. So I hope everybody can see this spreadsheet. And I also have the maps up that I can pull up as well. Park based on
I don't
the,
see it yet, Jay. I mean, I don't see it yet, Andrew.
oh, let me actually click share screen. Can you see it now?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Perfect. Okay. So just to refresh staff's memory a bit, I'll actually probably bring up the map. So when staff reviewed parking regulations, primarily we were thinking geographically, and we had an outer core where we were thinking that employee parking could be added and an inner core where 2-hour parking could be added. Park came to a very similar conclusion, though there are a few differences based on staff proposals versus park proposals. I'll highlight a few key areas. One would be Park was proposing to add more employee permit parking and 2-hour parking here, which we'll likely be discussing later as that came up at the forum to reconsider. Park had also thought that more resident only by the depot, if these were to change, would be a benefit, and more employee parking. This is for Park as well. We had originally thought that this was employee permit parking. It's not. I think that Park would like to add that to the employee permit program, but we can certainly discuss that. And then there were also some different kiosk specifics that Park was looking to recommend that we can get into if desired. So what we've done is created a spreadsheet of all the areas proposed for change. Again, in the outer core where employee parking is to be proposed, and also some resident on High Street. We've reviewed the inner core, again, Gould Street and Ash Street, which matches the the staff proposals. We've looked at all of the lots to see what could be done there. And Park has also looked at regulations themselves and has made some proposed recommendations, such as changing resident permit parking from 6 to 10:30 down to 6 to 9:30. And also similar to our thoughts, modify the employee parking permit price to incentivize that. So we can get into very specifics if Park wants to go street by street, but that's a pretty high key overview. And some areas that I thought we could discuss tonight, Park themselves, based on the forum, was that Lowell Street area, Sanborn Lane, or Sanborn Street, Lower Sanborn, and also the commuter parking. So go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Those were the two areas that I just kind of keyed in on. One, if you want to just go to that map, Andrew, that was pretty helpful. Up on Lowell Street, I think one consideration that may have to take into account is the first section in between Main Street and Lowell Street, where it kind of branches off down to the parking area right in front of the daycare and church, Old South Church. Yes. So there's daycare within that building, and that's used heavily throughout the day. So there's a lot of back and forth. So I don't know if you might want to reconsider employee parking in that section or just take that into account. I think the other section may be fine. It's just I know there's a lot of people that park there, a lot of parents that park there to pick up their children. And then the Vine Street piece, all the way down at the end. Remind me, and Julie, you may know this, is that MBTA owned? And we lease it? Is that how that works there? All right, I just, that was the question that I had. I didn't know how that worked out with employee permits with that lease agreement there.
I believe that's correct what you said, Ryan.
The only thing is, 'cause Christine here, we do have it regulated now, so.
Currently, this is resident only, and Park was just proposing to change that, which again can be up for discussion today.
Is the thought that making that employee permit, driving the employees further out in that lot opens up areas for resident and 2-hour and under parking in the inner core and outer core?
Yes, that's to get people out of the lot.
Okay.
I
And
think
to increase the number of spaces too.
Hmm?
And to increase the number of spaces.
I did see briefly on those charts that we had we were under in spaces. Did I read that right? Gould Street -15 and then,
so Gould Street is only -15 because we're proposing to remove the employee permit regulation here. So I just wanted to make sure that the count was including both additions and subtractions from some of these programs.
okay.
Ryan, what-
I like the suggestions. I think they make a lot of sense.
What was your question? And I didn't understand the answer about are we leasing this from the MBTA? Was that agreed that we were?
I believe so. I think that's what Julie was confirming. That's MBTA owned parking, but there's a lease agreement with the town to manage that parking, I believe.
I think that yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
clear to me whether I'm not sure that we really understood that that was resident only and that we were I thought it was 2-hour, that we had looked at a video online, a real-time video of those things. Maybe I'm thinking about something else, but I think converting it from resident only to exclusively 2-hour employee. I'm not sure what the lease agreement is with the MBTA, but I'm not sure that they would agree that it would probably should not be used for resident only, that commuters could use. So I guess my sense here is that maybe a better compromise would be to allow it to be resident and employee, according to and keep it consistent with the rest of that line of street. And I think that David Reese made that same comment at our forum as well.
That doesn't, we can't make it both things. You have, for an employee permit to work there, it needs to be signed as employee all day or 2-hour, anyone.
It would be signed both ways, resident or employee.
Right,
seems
no,
like a
you would
fair
have to
preference.
pick one or the other, usually, the way we do our traffic rules and permits. Right now, I did check it, because it's actually not in our traffic rules and regs, but we do have signage up that says resident permit parking only from 6 AM to 10:30. I don't know that that's just another area that the T doesn't care about again. We could check on it. I know I've been asking about it as well, but we do use it.
Yeah, Christine, I guess the question is, when we lease property from the T, do they have any say over what we use it for? Or just like we have it and now we regulate it, right?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing in the past with everything else, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
I
try to
don't-
get to the bottom if we still lease it or if we own it now.
Yeah, I don't think they stipulated what we could use it for. That was just my sort of question, just to double check that to make sure. But I agree, you have to have that either resident or employee. You have both.
Why can't you have both?
As far as regulating it, it's difficult to regulate at that point to have both.
I mean, I don't understand if you have, if a person has an employee sticker, or if they have a resident sticker, both of them can park there, right? So why is that such a problem?
I guess in my mind, Bernie, if you're trying to parcel out where people need to park, you would want to maybe push, based on your recommendations here, push the employees to a certain area and say, please park here. So we know this area over here is residential or, 2 hour or less parking for whoever wants to come into the downtown. When you start putting two different signs there, it's kind of convoluted, and maybe now you get employees missing spaces or and residents parking in spaces that we were trying to designate for employees. That's, at least in my mind, what I and how I think about it.
Yeah, but if it's already marked for dual use, 2 hours or employee, that's the same thing as having a, resident only or employee. I mean, both parties can park there depending on whether they have the sticker or not.
So
I just don't see why the.
So I guess I asked the park, what was their thought process on why they wanted to go from resident only to employee permit parking?
I don't think that it was obvious at the time. It wasn't certainly obvious to me that it was formerly resident only. In fact, I had the same the same question to Andrew this afternoon, which is how much commuter parking has been redesignated from resident only / commuter to some other use over the last couple of years without people really understanding or knowing it. How many spaces have we lost? This would be some 42 spaces that we would want to incent people to use for commuting and public transportation. And to exclude them from that, where they have it now, just doesn't seem like a fair compromise. So you take that and then you get another 16 down there, and I don't know how many others have been redesignated from resident only. But
Yeah, the challenge here, Bernie, is that this was kind of a linchpin to the overall plan we've been working towards, that we had agreed trying to create to significantly increase the supply of employee spaces, was how we opened up the 2 hours, more of the 2 hour spaces in the inner core. So that was kind of the whole goal of using these spaces for that purpose.
yeah, I understand that, Liz. I'm just saying that to take 42 there, 16 over or further up, that's 58 spaces. So we've got 50 some business owners. Christine, I don't know how many business owners you say you have registered in the downtown area. I know you had that number earlier, but let's say it's 50, right? We have 22,000 people in the town, 50 business owners, having, that's 0.2% of the population. And I just think that we've got a committee that's dominated, like 7 or 8 out of 9 people, are business owners. And it just optically doesn't look good that we're taking spaces away from the 99.8% of the other people in the town to favor this group that happens to be dominating the park.
I don't think 98% of the people in town are commuting every day, Bernie. I think that's not really
No, but they're residents.
a little false
right?
equivalency there.
They're
But my
residents.
problem is that we had come collectively to an agreement and a recommendation, which is why we have invited the PTTTF to this meeting. And now you are trying to undo one of the key components to the master plan that we had all agreed on. So
Yeah, because
that's
we
my
had-
concern.
Yeah,
I know we had one comment from one man who likes to park there, but we've been working on many
Yeah.
months of more data.
and I think we have something like, we had 3,000 resident-only parking permits before the fees were raised to 150. I think we have, 1,200 issued this year. That's a lot more people than I think that those are your customers, Liz, right? They're residents. They come to the town, they come downtown, they park, maybe they commute maybe they don't, they visit your bookstore. Why would you want to be?
Yeah, I get that. Bernie, so you forget that before I opened the bookstore, I used to commute into Boston. I used to be a commuter rail rider. And in the years when, and my husband did too, and when our jobs moved to different locations, because the commuter rail permit was so cheap in the past, we would just buy it every year anyway, just to have just in case on the couple of
Sure.
times we would go into Boston. So citing the number of resident permits that we have, that's not necessarily an equivalence to like who is using it every day. And I know things are different because of the pandemic, but things are different because of the pandemic, and those lots are largely sitting empty. And we're trying to, you know, solve a real problem that existed before, and that is there are too many employees parking in the downtown, and we got to put them somewhere. And I think we need to try this. And if we're wrong, I mean, the good news is there is always the power to change the regulations again.
Well,
But I
there's
don't
no-
think people are going to have trouble parking for the commuter rail if we
They will
raise
definitely
employee
have,
paces.
I think the comment was, was clear from that was an important comment. And I think that the agreement last time we met was that parking was not identified as resident only. It was identified as 2-hour parking. And it wasn't until the forum where somebody pointed out that that was resident only.
I don't
We
think
had
that's true,
4
Bernie. We
different
had
meetings,
identified it that
Bernie,
way.
right? We had 4 different meetings where I know that we brought it up on Street View and looked at the signs that said resident only. So
Yeah.
it was clearly known. It wasn't on that map, but I know that we had discussions about that at least 3 different times, because I remember thinking, why on earth are we talking about this yet again? We already went through this, right?
Because we shouldn't be taking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I guess I too used to commute every day into Boston, used to use the commuter rail. I get the whole commuter parking issue, but I do not think that even with that comment, that this committee would agree that commuter rail parking is sacrosanct, and that it's not an acceptable thing, that we can't reduce the number of spaces. I mean, in order to deal with the real issues that we have in downtown, we need to reduce that commuter parking. And sure, that may create some real issues with commuter parking, but we can also address those. But this is the way that this committee felt like it was the best way to do this, and to redo this at this point, I think is crazy, because as Liz said, without those, I think the whole thing falls apart. Without those as employee.
I think you're being more dramatic than it really
I
needs
am
to be.
not.
I think that you've got a situation where we have dual needs, and having, I think that there's something called compromise. And this is a reasonable compromise to designate it for dual purposes. And let's face it, we've already said and discussed many times that if we change it to 9:30, after 9:30, it becomes unrestricted anyway. So employees can use it, and anybody,
Yes, but
So-
we've also said multiple times that this is the area of town where we're trying to support all the medical and dental practices who go in at 7. So that 9:30 is not helpful to them.
No, but it doesn't mean that it's going to all be filled with commuters either. And plus they didn't realize that they could use the unrestricted parking right behind their, the neighborhood and behind their buildings too. So either way, it's going to generate traffic, over into that neighborhood. And I think we're better off, I think the feedback we got that we're better off allowing the commuters to park there as well as the employees, rather than force them back into the neighborhood.
Well, that was the compromise, that we have all the open spaces on the neighborhoods, and we wanted to keep them unrestricted, my street included, so that you can move the commuters out of the inner core, and that was part of it. So we opened up There's a lot of spaces in the unregulated district that is there specifically to take the overflow should people want to walk. So if we're asking employees to walk that far to go, let's say they park on Vine Street and they work at CVS, that's a nice hike. So commuters can certainly do the same thing. And I think that's a huge compromise.
Yeah, but
And
we're
I think it's
taking,
also important to remember that we actually voted on all of this line by line. And I am really sensitive to wasting the time of the PTTTF who's here tonight trying to react to something that we actually agreed to as a committee. I'm sorry you didn't remember that that parking was originally resident only right now, but the rest of us did, and we've already voted on it.
Thank you. That was
Okay.
going to be my comment as well.
If I could just clear up too, Bernie, it's not a dual sign, like it's not 2 regulations, employee or 2 hour. That's how it was voted in the traffic rules. So that's one article in the traffic rules. So to put another one, that would make it confusing and dual. And as far as I remember, even before the pandemic, Vine Street was never full, ever, that I can remember. And the entire point of PTF trying to change the parking, we did need to find more employee parking somewhere. So I wouldn't recommend it'd be easy to do a dual different articles based on our traffic rules.
I can add that I think Christine and I mentioned before the forum that we were wrong on Arlington and potentially Washington Street, and that if the park wanted to discuss changing these from no parking and add it to the commuter supply or different, that can be a discussion that should happen, could happen.
I think if I could just comment that I've said in February all the way until now, the downtown parking issue is an employee issue. Hopefully it doesn't become all the new buildings, et cetera, but it's the employee issue. We need spots for employees. So we have to create more spots for employees. In general, we might have to create more spots, and there's only one way of doing that. So for the time being, the downtown parking issues, employees, we need more spots for the employees. Vine Street, if it's 46 or 50, whatever spots up there, I mean, that seems like a 55, yeah. That seems like a massive bump to it, especially with the other changes that are proposed to take away from the employees. So I think the only takeaway from the meeting, other than the Vine Street thing, is just Sanborn should just be discussed with whatever's going to happen with there, because that just seems like that's just a massive cluster. But as it stands with Vine Street, I also agree it's not worth discussing it any further. We've already voted on it, or whatever we've done, and it's just things just have to stay the way that they were for there. Sanborn is you know, its own town at this point. So
yeah, I mean, I gotta say, strongly disagree that you can take commuter parking away. You've got far more people. You've got historically 3,000 permits that were pulled, that were bought for that purpose. So you're talking about 3,000 people compared to a couple of hundred, and taking 50 spots away from the 3,000 people to give to the couple hundred is just not, you know, there's no reason that you can't compromise. I think it's being very self-serving and selfish to say that it has to be employee and people who need to commute and go to work can't use it. That just seems to be too self-serving, and it's just optically very bad for a committee that's dominated by business owners to be taking that space away for their use and excluding everybody else who, by the way, are your customers.
So, Bernie, there's definitely, could always be improvements to these sorts of plans. And, we could, discuss line by line and zone by zone opportunities. And of course, no one ever fully agreed. But I mean, I think in the interest of time and kind of where we are, and in the interest of the PTTTF, we should just go forward with this plan. And then if there's any like glaring issues later, it's a sign. We can swap it out. Like if there turns out to be this crazy, real big problem, but I think we should go with the best thing we have right now. That's my personal suggestion.
strongly, I couldn't disagree more strongly that taking spaces away from commuters that are also unrestricted after 9:30, and if you wanted to designate them employee too, that's a good, I'm looking for a compromise here, right? I'm not saying it's all or none, but the other people are saying it's this way or not. There's no reason that we can't compromise on this matter.
Bernie, the
Absolutely.
reason is the professionals who actually have to enforce this have already given you the feedback that regulating something in two different ways hurts their process. And part of the charter of this group is to simplify parking regs so that the police are not overly taxed with multiple regulations where they are not necessary. The deputy chief has already clarified for you that Vine Street has not been full in the past anyway, prior to the pandemic. So this is a low risk option.
I disagree. I disagree.
We know,
that
and Bernie, we know you
No, I
disagree. We
disagree.
know
It
your
has.
view.
I
But
don't
the
understand
committee
it's not-
collectively, as a majority, already agreed to this. And that's where we are. And we shouldn't talk about it anymore. It is wasting time.
Yeah, well, it isn't wasting time because not to make it, to have to force commuters to waste their time every time they need to park every morning is not an effective use of their time.
They will not have to because there is sufficient supply right now for commuters. So your argument is not helpful.
This is not about COVID.
No, it isn't.
We're
It is
not-
about
we're
what
not
Christine
working-
told us happened before COVID, when there was plenty of space on Vine Street that was not used.
But we had
Before
feedback, from our forum, and we were there to listen to the people who attended the forum. And David Reese said that that's all those spaces that we're contemplating moving over to employee. He said those were all filled with commuters. So that's a piece of information that I find helpful. I don't understand, and I've driven by that many times when commuting, and I've always remembered it being relatively full.
Well, Lord
So I
knows
don't
I want to
understand
trust
that.
a civilian more than our deputy chief of police on what tends to
Well,
happen.
could you, Deputy Chief, could you please explain your comment? Because I'm talking about a couple of years ago before
Right,
COVID.
as far back as I remember, the end of Vine, High and Vine was never full, ever.
So if it's flat, why can't we compromise, I guess? I don't understand the lack of willing to compromise.
It's just the way the traffic rules and regulations are written, that each parking space has to be designated with one traffic rule.
But
I think,
we have
Bernie,
dual-
the issue is that when this committee went through all of this, right, we did compromise. I think everyone compromised to come up with a plan that hung together and to pull out one particular issue and say, no, we need to compromise on this one piece. I don't think that's a compromise. I think, right, we all sort of pushed and pulled on the entire thing. And a committee doesn't, right, that's not the way that, maybe that's the way you negotiate, but right, that's not negotiating in full faith and pulling out one little piece and say, we must compromise on this one piece. We have compromised.
Well, let's put it this way. Here's the way I'd look at the compromise. We are adding kiosks. Who does that benefit? The business owners, because it creates turnover, right? We lowered the parking fees for employee parking permits. Who does that benefit? The business owners. We increased the number of employee parking spaces substantially. Who does that benefit? The business owners. Now, to me, that's a one-way compromise, right? And then we say, well, wouldn't the business owners who've already benefited 100% from all these changes, they're unwilling to give a little bit when it comes to dual purposing some sites. To me, that's not compromise. That's not compromise whatsoever. That's self-serving. It's a committee that's dominated by business owners who are, serving themselves and ignoring the needs of the majority of the people who need to use these spaces. So that's why I think there should be a more, a better compromise instead of just self-serving the business owners.
Can I just chime in and clarify something really quickly? When you're saying that the committee is dominated by business owners, I think that's totally incorrect.
Completely.
Can all the business owners on Park please raise your hands?
You've
So
got,
there's three.
you've got Tom, Dan, Liz,
And maybe,
Chris, so that's 4. I'm gonna put John in there because he's on the CBTC and it's.
But he doesn't own a
What?
business.
He doesn't
I don't
own
own
a
a business in town.
Bernie, this is getting out of hand. We need to move on.
Yeah.
This is, and it's offensive. that You're going to try and wrap all of us in as being business owners. We've discussed this ad nauseum, and I think it's time to move on. None of us got all of our wishes here, and it's just, we need to move on.
So so the commuters are net losers in this
The commuters
whole
are not net losers. I'm a
compromise, right?
commuter myself.
Well,
And
I've had my hand raised for a while.
Commuter could walk.
Sorry, Dan.
Yeah,
people have hand
Dan,
raised.
let's hear from Dan, please.
I myself, I feel that we have talked about it and we did vote. I think that if it becomes a glaring mistake, then we can revisit, and it will be revisited if there is an issue with it. So I think we should go with what we got and let's move on to the next agenda.
Tom?
Thank you for asking. I concur. As Dan said, if there's a huge mistake here, but a town official who's the assistant chief has said that it's not overflowing each day. And this may not be the only issue that's going to be revisited down the road. This committee's doing the best they can, but on this issue, I feel that we should live with what we put together, which was well-intentioned, and move on. And we've got a lot of other issues. As has already has been mentioned, I'm very interested in discussing the issue at Sanborn. That jumped out loud and clear at the forum we had last week. Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer up an opinion here about a lot of the things that we deal with at PTTF are not always perfect. And sometimes just moving forward and implementing something, and if you find out that it doesn't work, that's also successful in the sense that you can go back and change it and rework it. I'm sure all of this isn't going to be perfect. I think he came up with a very concise and well thought out plan, to the point that the deputy made about Vine Street. I can corroborate that. We used to use that for storage area when we were doing various construction projects in neighborhoods in that area. So I know it wasn't overflowing with parking. And again, I think if there's a glaring change that needs to make, it can be revisited for sure. And it's just a sign. Signs are very easy to change. Not like we're reconstructing any roadways or doing any protected bump outs or anything like that. So I wouldn't just not make a change. I would just make a change, and then if it doesn't work, you can always revisit it. I think
How
that
would
be
we, how would we know when to revisit it? I mean, how do you, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to park downtown to take the commuter rail, and there were absolutely no spaces. You can go, you can certainly go into the neighborhoods, but you won't be able to know how many, I mean, how do we know when we need more commuter parking? What's the criteria that we're going to use?
Well, I think to that same point, you could use that same point to say that how do you know that you don't have enough commuter parking? You're going to have to analyze it and take the comments and feedback that you receive from the community. And again, don't look at this as the end all be all, because parking will always have to change. It might change after COVID. We don't know. It may remain the same, but it's a fluid living document if you want to think about it that way. And I think you just have to be open to analyzing what the changes that you make and just stick with them for now. I'm happy to weigh in on anything on Sanborn Street. I don't really know what came up in that discussion.
Are we going to talk about Sanborn now?
Yes, please.
So if I can just jump in, we kept it as no change. And I think part of me thought that it didn't need to be changed during this process because we didn't hear otherwise from any of the residents or the apartment building owner. So I was really glad that he showed up at the meeting. I don't know how he wants it to get changed as far as, does he just want resident only on the street? It's a pretty tight street, but you can still park on it. I don't know if he was looking for overnight parking or if it was just for his residents to be able to park during the day. I was a little confused of what he was looking for. Does anybody have more of a definitive plan of what he wanted?
He's actually entering the meeting right now. So
Perfect.
maybe he can speak to that question.
Awesome.
Just give him a second. I'll welcome him. Hi, George.
Oh, am I on here? Wait. Here we go. I'm live.
Yeah, we were just starting the conversation on Sanborn Street, and there was a question about what it was specifically that you were hoping for.
Well, what I was hoping was to at least to be treated the same way as what's going on the opposite side of Sanborn Street and the opposite side of Woburn Street, or even Woburn Street itself. I just don't think it's, and I understand that your comments from before that it was a 2-hour zone, but I'm sure that, you know, that these things, and it has been since 2006, I think you said, but I'm sure there was another group of people just like you having a debate just like we are today. And, but the world has changed, certainly the town of Reading in the last 16 years. And so my point is, these are residents, voting residents of some of my, at least 4 or 5 of my residents, one of them's been there since the 60s in that building, and a couple of them since the 90s. They're part of the resident of the Reading community. And to treat the commercial district, i.e. their employees, and say, hey, you can park wherever you want on, you know, on, and with the sticker on Woburn Street, but, you know, George, sorry, your residents who have no place else to park other than what they pay for, no, you got to go fend for yourself somewhere, or go find something far away and pay a heck of a lot more, and hope for the best if it's a snow emergency, or, well, forget that, that's out of the question, but that's the exception. But I'm just talking about if they're in night parking and they need to park on that street, or they need to just during the normal course of their business day, pull up, leave their car there to go in, have lunch, do something, not worried about getting ticketed. I think it's only fair when I look at everything else around it. Linden Street is resident permit. I don't see any residential buildings there. I see single family homes with driveways, and we're telling them they can come out and park on the street, but here's a residential building, the only one on that side of Sanborn Street, south of Woburn Street. And I just don't think it, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. You want to make everything a 2-hour parking only everywhere, and everybody fends for themselves, the employees, other residents, and everything else. Okay, then that's a discussion you guys can have. But to me, this seems quite unfair here.
George, what were you suggesting that what designation on that street were you suggesting?
If I recall, I do not have the former paperwork, but if I recall, to have the resident parking permit would be the one that I would prefer, and it's a daytime permit. It's not a nighttime permit. It's not a permit during snow emergencies. But to give them the same respect of other residents that are street down, you know, like Linden Street, I'm not as familiar with all the other neighborhoods. But like people in those neighborhoods would enjoy so that they are not competing with commuters and with employees of our commercial district.
The
Again.
rest of Sanborn is unrestricted. So would that be any better, or because the residents will have to pay $150 for the sticker unless we lower that?
No, residents who front a regulation get that permit for free. So if it was switched to resident permit, that would not cost the residents on that street,
That obviously would be the preference.
So
if I'm understanding that, or if I'm remembering that right, Julie and Andrew.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of demand. I mean, with the postmark there now, I'll see cars parked down there. And with the bank across the street, there's never a problem at the Knights of Columbus. They have ample parking. My neighbor in between myself and the Knights of Columbus has ample parking for his, I believe it's a 3-family. He's got like 5 or 6 spaces there. But I don't, and next, other than John at the funeral home next door, you know, it's an evening service or a funeral in the morning, you know, and generally generally speaking, those events are after the commute and the you know, when employees are coming to work and getting parking. So there's not a lot of my residents, you know.
George,
The ones that have vehicles, they're working people. They park it. I never have a problem. They park at the Knights of Columbus. They get up, they go to work. And then, you know, some of the others, especially, you know, nowadays, you have a few people that, you know, are doing a little more work from home. One's a realist, an appraiser for real estate. That's an intermittent job throughout the whole day.
Julie, possible to treat his building the same way as you treat that other resident on, is it Gould Street, that's allowed to park on the street because there's no parking? Because his building doesn't have parking.
That's an interesting idea, Karen. I just, George, you have 16 units in your building?
That is correct.
I would want to hear from other staff on that, because I know the other place where that happens is a 2-family building, I think. So it's a limited amount of spaces that are being
Right,
used.
I mean, right, there's a lot more residents in his building, and it wouldn't resolve any overnight issues. So your residents are still gonna have to find a place to park it overnight, but at least during the day, let's say it's half, like even if it's 6 cars or 8 cars, I think the only real issue might be that you'd be fighting with some of the postmark people. But if we could, you know, I mean, there's got to be a way to tweak the street to accommodate the fact that they have no parking and that they probably became very used to having on-street parking for a long time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is Lower Linden, I think it's only resident until 10:30, isn't it? I think it's open after that.
Right, everything. Our resident sticker all ends at 10:30 right now.
Right.
It would be very hard to do that building only on a street that's so busy. Gould
Yeah.
Street is so easy because no one's down there for that home. That's the only, to make it just specific for that. So I'm not saying I'm against any resident parking there, but to say it's only those residents is very hard to enforce.
Right, that's what I was thinking, that you can't say it's okay for that building, but not for the house next door. because
Right.
Residents, so it's just a matter of, George, is it just a matter of changing it so that if you're a resident, you can park all day, or 2 hour for people without a sticker? Is that a possibility?
Well, first of all, can I back up? When you say Linden Street, could you please explain what, that they can park there until 10:30? What is that? What exactly does that mean? Does that mean that they can park overnight?
No, that's just more for them to be able to not have commuters park on the street during the morning commute. And so
Right.
after
So
10:30, anybody can park there.
Correct. That's what I assumed. I mean, managed property and among many communities, one of them being Brookline, and it's the same thing because people come to jump on the T.
Right.
All right, and so the residents are restricted until after a certain time. Then, so the second part of the question is what do I think the resolution is? I think it's, you know, what gives my residents the best flexibility. And without knowing everything else, you said Gould Street and all this stuff. Forgive me, I haven't driven around and done the homework on a lot of this stuff. You know, to really say, is that comparable or not?
Are you looking for it to be just like Linden?
But I think if you know, if my residents could freely park on the street without worrying about getting a ticket during the day, however the committee would recommend to do that, whether it's a permitting thing, hopefully for free, it seems to me that would be the best solution. Again, one time way back when I lived in Brighton, and it was resident permit parking only, and you could park on the street. So everybody had a parking sticker by proving they're a resident. So there are ways around this. It's, we're talking about a way to have when the police come down the street and they see a sticker, would seem the most logical to me, and say that vehicle is allowed to be here. And that would be the best solution, I think. Especially knowing that they have to get out of the Knights of Columbus by like 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Because they're renting to, again, those employees and those businesses that you're opening Woburn Street up to. And I don't see them overtaxed.
So I guess the question for the committee is, does anybody have a problem with changing this to a resident permit street like Linden? And Ryan, I'm sorry, I see you have your hand up. Did you have something to say about this? You're on mute.
Muted.
Sorry about that. I was just curious, what's the current regulation? Or is it unregulated?
It's currently a 2-hour.
Yeah, so the lower Sanborn westerly side is 2-hour.
And there's only parking on one side of the street, correct?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this map is correct.
No.
Yeah, it's on the westerly side.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Why is this suddenly an issue? Did something change?
We didn't fix this at all. We didn't change anything. We kept it as it was before, and George has graciously reminded us that we should look at it.
Right. That was actually before you got to this point. I had some conversations early on with Julie when I got the public notice. And then was it Sarah that asked that question?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. There's been some slight changes to the building. As I said, some of the residents there, I can tell you honestly, you can believe me when I say this, it's a statement and it's a fact. I haven't thrown anybody out of that building since I purchased it. I have some very long-term residents there. I'm happy they stayed there, and they are well below market because I respect them. And I'm trying to give them an opportunity. But at the same time, some of the other units will change. And when I tell them to park over here, and then and it's night parking only, most of them don't even shrug. But the reality is that people will, be coming and going, and a few people have gotten tickets, and I think that was a result of more what's happened at the Postmark condominiums, which generally on that side of the street down at their end, there are cars. it's kind of intermittent what I see, and I'm at the building, quite frankly. I'm a resident of Stoneham, so it's really just at North Street in Stoneham. It's literally a you're looking at the chief cook, bottle washer, project manager, property manager, and turnover expert right here. So I'm up there all the time. And I have and I can make a decent assessment. I think the permit is the way to go, so that they won't be troubled if they're parking there for several hours.
George,
Or
just
they
out of
leave their car there and they run out to go have lunch with someone else, and they're not gonna come back and get a ticket. That's what I would request.
George, just out of curiosity, under what circumstances are they allowed to park at the Knights of Columbus overnight? Are they just, do they rent spaces there, or?
They rent spaces, they're not assigned. And it's Monday through Friday overnight. I believe it's after 5. I could get this and send it to Julie for the committee. But I believe it's after 5 and they have to be out in the morning. And I'm going to say 8:30. Maybe I'm saying 8:30 because it could be 8 and it could be 9, but it's certainly before the banks and things like that are opening downtown, which I believe is some of the customers of the Knights of Columbus. Yeah. Oh, and the weekends there's, again, because there's no demand from the banks, that's right, or not as much from some of the other businesses down there, or maybe it's an attorney, an accountant, or different people that are traditional 9 to 5 during the weekdays, and not the CVS employees or a shop that's opened or a pizza place. It might be open 7 days a week.
Could I just add one other point? The reason that I mentioned Sanborn Street's its own town at this point is the addition with the postmark stuff and people needing overnight parking and that kind of situation as well. Because that, as much as we don't want to have to deal with this situation, I think it presented itself coupled with this as well. So Sanborn Street, so I think maybe changing Sanborn to resident only solves that too, because then those residents can get that as well, or are we making things worse? I could have to hear from staff or whoever else that knows that area as opposed to me.
Well, I think George will also be able to chime in, because what did his residents do when it was a problem with the postmark earlier? Like, were they forced to park in Upper Sanborn?
Oh, yes, they were all over the place. During construction, it was chaos, but they were tolerant, as you can imagine. I'm sure there were purported controls, and and for construction, I'm familiar with it. My company does a little bit of development ourselves, and you can have staging areas off-site and things like that, but deliveries and equipment and utilities coming in, and so it was difficult to even park for 2 minutes in a lot of these areas, or even get down your street. But I don't know. I can only imagine. I heard in the last meeting that the requirement for the condominium, if I recall correctly, was like 1.4 cars per unit, spaces per unit, and they're mostly 2 bedrooms. And I'm saying, well, that was probably something that was pushed through that they should have had an abundance of parking required in my mind, so that given the area that it's in, so that we wouldn't. That nobody has to have these discussions, and that the parking is plentiful if they were adding more than enough to take care of their own.
So that aside, staff, does anybody have any concerns about changing this to resident?
I just have one question. Does that mean, who would that be? Which residents would that be for?
It's like the regular, it's like a normal, it's like all the other places that are signed, resident parking only 6:30 to 9:30. Free for all afterwards, right? It's just that same regulation. It's not a new thing. It's not a different wacky kind. It's the same as whatever's on Linden or down by the train or anything.
And it would be for any downtown resident could park there, right?
Any
Or is it
town
just for,
resident, anybody with a sticker,
okay.
So,
could
but then
people
that would
post-
also open the door to postmark people parking there as well.
It would open the door to the entire town of Reading who has,
Right.
anybody who has a sticker,
Right.
just like any resident space that requires a sticker.
Yeah.
And that's what Linden Street is, right? The lower half. So it would be equivalent.
So it's not permit parking only.
It is, it's resident permit.
Oh, okay, so they have a permit, all right. As
Yeah.
long, yeah, but if it's a
But it
resident,
wouldn't be limited to people in your building, is what I'm hearing, right? Anybody could park there.
oh, I
right.
would love it if it was, you know, if that was in your purview to.
Yeah,
to
it's
have it
not,
limited
it's not
to
in our
people in my
purview to
building.
provide parking for one building alone.
Yes, right. You know, look, I guess, you know, hey, far be it from me, my father would be disappointed. George, why did you go for the big ask? The ask is, you know, I want permanent spaces in front of my building, but, you know, I'm trying to work with you and I'm a reasonable man. And I understood the investment when I purchased it. It's a great building. I've invested a lot of money into it. And I'm a long-term holder. This is not a flip. I would have done it a long time ago. So I you know, I want to be a good neighbor and be a cooperative owner in the community.
Can we ask
Along
the
with
deputy-
along with supporting some of the other things that are being talked about for, you know, a commercial district and doing things down there that benefit everybody. In my view, that benefits the whole town, not just what's happening down in the commercial.
Erin, I see that you have some thoughts.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Liz. I had a question for George. I know that there are 2 private parking lots in the area and including the nights, and I wasn't sure of the terms of daytime parking, if daytime parking was available to residents at some of the adjacent private parking lots that are literally on either side of Sanborn Street. Or if that was something that had been pursued as an option for your residents during the day.
Well, Erin, it's not a large area. As far as I know, the available parking is not in the office building on the corner, and or down a Postmark, but in between there's a lot that I have reached out to. And the message from the owner is he's got some other commercial interest, and you know, he's not overparked either. But so I'm trying to work with him and see whether I could do something that accommodate my residents. That would be wonderful. Hell, I'll buy the damn parking lot. Sorry for the vernacular. To solve this problem, then we wouldn't have to have these discussions. And then when you say on both sides of the street, the other one you're talking about is 5 or 6 units that are between my building, the brick building, and the Knights of Columbus. You know, it's an elevated thing. There's a little hillside there, and in between there is a little blue 3-family building. Wonderful. Gentleman owns it, Peter Giles, and he's been a great neighbor, and we collaborate on things. But I just have an easement to a dumpster and access there to get to the rear of my building, deliveries and things of that nature.
Thank you.
I'm sure there was a lot more open space when it was built in 1935.
Ryan, did you have something to add? I'm sorry, you're on mute again.
I'm sorry, I should be used to this by now. I think we're maybe only talking about 15 spaces on Sanborn Street, if we're lucky. And I'm wondering, does it make sense to split it and say 2-hour parking closer down towards Haven Street, the corridor area, and then leave resident parking for the remaining piece? And as I was thinking that, I sort of wasn't thinking about the funeral home and what happens when they have an event there. So I don't know. I'm sure they spill over when they have a very large event. And I'm not sure if we should accommodate that or just deal with it as it happens. But I'm wondering if we could just, if it's not too difficult to just split it, given the fact that you have a very large building there close to Haven Street, you can actually just use that as your point of where you split it and leave the remaining piece resident only.
Again, my intent certainly is not to make things more difficult for the funeral home next door. Again, I have a very good relationship with John over there too. You know, maybe an element to the fact that I don't think the business is really running at, you know, 110%, so to speak. It's not a really thriving funeral home from my view. That said, Ryan, I guess my 2 cents is that it's traditionally services in the morning, you know, 9 or 10 or, you know, whatever, and that the people are not there for more than a few hours. And I wouldn't want to push them out by saying it's residents only. So that's a
Don't we
good
have the
point.
bizarrely lucky circumstance of there also being a funeral home on Linden, so we know what happens already?
Yeah, there is.
I assume that,
funeral
you know,
home
I would imagine, you know, and Christine, tell me if I'm wrong, but I imagine your team isn't out like, darn you, get out, I'm gonna give you a ticket while you're attending this wake, right? I mean,
Right.
No,
common sense
Linden, I don't know
prevails.
if I don't know if Linden's a little bigger, but they definitely get away with kind of putting cars on 2 sides during a wake or funeral, you
Right.
know? So I mean, if fire trucks can get down, that's, you know, that's what we need to happen in the ambulance. So.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't even a sides issue, just a matter of regulating it as resident only, you know, resident permit. It's just, we have the use case 1 block over, right? We're just trying to create the equivalent type of scenario.
And they both have, I don't know how many spaces are down there at the funeral home on Linden Street, but John has a, you know, he has a substantial size parking lot.
Well, the funeral home also has access to the church across the street, the Baptist, and they park on Woburn and they park on
Yeah.
Sanborn. So I'm not sure I would worry too much about them. They're lovely, but I think they've got enough places they can crawl out if they need to. I think
Right.
Linden has a lot less parking than he does, actually, when you look at it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so as far as making the street half and half or a third and 2/3, I guess, Christine, would that cause a problem for enforcement, or is it just kind of winging it?
No, I mean, as long as the, you know, this new parking enforcement officer that we're on our 2nd round of interviews with someone great. So that's good. I think that's okay. They just have to realize where the split exactly is with the signage has to be set up right.
I think that's an option.
It's pretty easy for a policeman. It's pretty easy for a policeman to see that there's an event going on at a funeral home. You know, not start ticketing all the cars out in front of the funeral home, in my mind.
This is starting to sound like it'll be another one of these things that we cross our fingers and say we can give it a go. And if we need to revisit it, we revisit it.
I think it's worth a shot. I think it's worth a shot.
So when the process to revisit, would that be bringing it to the attention of the PTTF or to the police, or what would that be? I'm just curious. You know, if 6 months from now, something's not working out and the park committee's no longer here, how would people say they need to, what's the process?
PTTF.
Yeah, we do. We have a
Okay.
traffic officer, Mike Skelton, that takes our complaints, but any one of us in this meeting for staff get different concerns from town. We just bring it to our monthly meeting.
Okay. I think just so we can tell people that, that there is a way to keep
Right.
the process going. I think that's important.
So George, it would be a great idea if you could actually let Julie know, 6 months after the signs go up or whatever, to see how it's working for you and see whether or not. 'Cause we won't
Absolutely.
know, you would know. We won't.
No, absolutely. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would like to add though, since we're talking about the police, which is the enforcement arm here. It really hasn't been, they haven't been a harassing type. This is not like, being in downtown Boston or something and, you run into the bakery and you run right back out and you've got a ticket. No, they seem to be managing it diplomatically. My comment earlier about a few residents complaining that they got tickets, I think was probably a result of more, as I said, from a lot of parking from Postmark. Because from time to time, I'll see it because it's usually from their Sanborn Street doorway, and it works its way back. All right, they're not parking on the corner of Woburn Street and Sanborn and walking down to Postmark. They park out front and then they work their way back. And if you drive down there, and I invite you to do so, down the street, you'll see it's very rare that there's, that it's full from even right now, from the corner of Woburn and Sanborn all the way down. Nor was it certainly when the post office was closed. And so there may be a little bit of their overflow, their visitors, their deliveries, DoorDash, everything else that we deal with nowadays. It's kind of pushing it back, and there are fewer spaces there. But I'm just interested in having a fair result here and not having my residents being treated any different than anybody else that chooses to live close to the commercial area downtown.
Well, thank you for bringing it up last week.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As I said, I addressed a group a long time ago and brought it up to Julie, so I'm glad I was able to participate. That when you've got to this point of recommendations and to be able to be heard again. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, George.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for me, if I could chime in, it serves a dual purpose. We can always change it in the future because Sanborn, like you mentioned, Postmark, et cetera, there's issues up there. And if this can alleviate some of them, I think it's worth a shot. And that's where I'm at on this one.
Do we need to vote or do we just move on?
Sounds like there's a consensus, and I'm noting this in the spreadsheet, so I don't think there's a formal vote that's really needed.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
No problem. Actually, while we're still on the topic, one of the other items that came up on Sanborn and perhaps maybe across the downtown was formally striping the area. I've talked to Ryan a bit on this, but Ryan, do you have any comments on that, on why that may or may not be?
I do. I think in the instance of having downtown parking, I've seen it two ways. If you're having an issue where people are not organized, then you'd place formalized parking. The problem with that is once you do that, you lose that ability of people just to park a little bit closer to each other and get more parking in. So I think in the instance of Sanborn Street, where you're going to have a portion potentially be residential, I would not stripe that at all. You may be able to get more people parking closer to each other, just knowing if they're all from one building, they're going to park closer so they can get more people in. Whereas if you had stripe parking, that's going to eliminate that. Just in the sheer fact that, you know, a parallel space, internal ones are 22 feet long and external one, you know, ones on the outside are 20. So, and you can get a lot closer. Anyone who's parked in a city knows that. So that's why I personally would not stripe it. Another reason is it just brings our line painting maintenance up too. We always try to keep that down.
Ryan, do we do any, rather than striping individual spaces, do we have that sort of warning paint or curb paint or something that's like that don't get too close to the corner or don't park in front of a high, so not designating spaces, but just the keep away from this kind of markings?
The only place that I know of that where we have something like that would be like a restricted do not park area, like a fire lane or something like that, where you might see a painted curb or something like that. We generally don't have that. I'm not sure if you want that in the downtown. It can look unsightly depending on how it's done, to be honest with you. And especially if we're getting to the point where that whole Haven Street corridor and maybe some of the little branches off of Haven Street are going to be getting sort of a facelift. Just to keep that in mind. We could put up signage though. But again, Deputy, I don't think we have any signs that we may have a few that say don't park close to the corner or something like that, but I don't know if
Yeah, we
have
have all the 20 feet to the intersection or 20 feet to the street. We have a lot of those
Yeah.
signs.
Yeah, and so that's typically what we put up.
Yeah, I was thinking, and honestly, I was thinking more for Upper Sanborn versus the closer to the, you know, that group of residents was concerned that there are a lot of people like hanging over driveways and getting too close, you know, making it visibility difficult coming around corners. And I mean, I agree with you. I think lining that street is probably going to do more harm than good. And so I didn't know if there was some compromise solution to add some sort of something, but it sounds not practical.
I think people just end up ignoring it anyway, to be honest with you. It's on the ground, they're going to ignore it. We find that people ignore signs as well. So, and signs are easier to see. I'm not necessarily sure that there would be a benefit to doing that. And like you said, people overhang driveways, and anyone who has a driveway knows not to overhang a driveway because you can't get out. So I don't know if there's a benefit there, but it's a great suggestion, and it is done in other communities. We just don't do it here.
Thank you. Bernie, Andrew, what's our next item?
If Park feels they understand the whole areas, we can move on to next steps.
Oh, I guess one other thing that came up in the public forum was the number of handicap spaces downtown and whether we felt that supply was sufficient. So I would love to revisit that a little bit.
I did like the comment about vans. I don't know if the spaces we have are van accessible. She made it sound like that our spaces aren't big enough for a van.
Yeah, so I was marching around the CVS lot today at one point just to review what spaces, because there are 5 different handicap spaces back there. And the one immediately adjacent to this CVS entrance is just a plain old parking, space with nothing on either side. Then there are 2 sort of leading into the back path to Bunratty. And those are van, they have the striping on either side. So you could load in and out of a van on either side. And there's another one close to the back entrance of Northern Bank that is just a regular space. And there's another one next to the Reading Cooperative Bank that is just a regular space. So just in that one, and then the one in front of CVS that's closest to Venetian Moon is just a regular space. And obviously if we were trying to put another more van accessible spaces in downtown, then that means, obviously you're going to have to eat into other spaces. And I think we should consider whether, maybe we need to make that investment, because we did get a lot of feedback about this item. I don't know what other people think.
I agree.
And I just don't know where it would go.
No, I
don't
mean, it
even
would
know if
literally
that's
be
for
like
us to
you'd
decide.
eat spaces. Yeah, for sure.
I was just saying, I don't think it's for us to decide where it goes. I think we just sort of pass the message along is that we need more that have that, right? I mean, I don't really know where I would put it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
Okay.
because part of it is then you also need the curb cut rampy business from, you need to make sure that they're either on the flat places or, so for example, in front of the CVS, if you had one at the other end of that cobblestone area, there is not, to my knowledge,
Right.
A curb
a
cut.
zero entry onto the sidewalk, so there's multiple things required, but.
So
I think there's a few opportunities we can look for specific areas. Say if we do move forward with the CVS lot redesign or the Lower Haven streetscape design, we can try to look for some key areas where that might be a benefit.
Yeah, I guess, Andrew, my question would be, because CVS lot, while 3 out of the 5 technically don't have that, at least one, well, a couple of them, the one near the Reading Cooperative Bank rarely has anybody parking on either side of it. So it actually almost by default is one without even being one. I'm thinking something not in a lot. I'm wondering if there are more street options. I feel like that's the hole that people were saying where they're not finding, and I don't know what the answer is or if there is one, because I know like in a parallel space that is not helpful. I'm thinking of the smaller outer lot kind of things. I don't know.
A good note and certainly worth looking at. We're looking at similar, say along Gould Street where 24 Gould is, it's technically street parking that's angled. So there is no ADA space there, but we're looking into what might be potential there to add that. And we can look at other areas similar to that.
Great. Anybody else have any thoughts on this, or do we feel comfortable just saying the official people know to look at it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess my only thing is, I'm not sure if you've mentioned it, but the CVS, so there is the back spot out the door, perhaps we just make another one handicap. But I think you kind of mentioned that, but that's my thoughts.
All right, so Andrew, in whatever way you were going to move us along before, carry on.
Okay. So I guess first I would ask if PTTTF has any questions on other members of PTTTF have questions or comments on what's been discussed so far before I move on. Not seeing any. Okay, so the next steps for Park would be, of course, we have to bring these recommendations to the select board. I would look to write this up, whether in the spreadsheet or in other formats that are appropriate for such, for the park to give. And right now, the February agendas, I believe, are full. So we were looking for potential dates in March or April. Right now, some dates include Tuesday, March 22nd and Tuesday, April 19th. We were hopeful that the March 22nd could work if Park is available. And we can get that in.
I'm definitely available, Andrew. Moving on.
I'm available.
I'm available. Definitely the sooner the better.
I'm available.
I can make it as well.
I'm available.
Me too.
Nothing on my schedule at this point.
Great, so we can look to coordinate that and confirm that. I think even with that date, we might need a vote to request an extension of Park beyond April 1st. I don't know if the select board will wrap that up in one night or not. So if Tuesday, the April 19th is also needed with them, we should, formalize that extension just to make sure that it's allowed and appropriate and good to go. So I think Park needs to vote to request the extension per the agenda.
So do you need one of us to make a motion?
I do.
I move, God help us, that we ask for an extension.
Beyond April 1st, 2022,
Yes.
whatever that may be.
I second it. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, please.
I second. Now do we go all in favor?
Sure. All in favor?
All in favor.
I'm opposed.
You're opposed. I mean, truly, Bernie, nobody wants to extend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also opposed, but I vote in favor.
Yeah, we're very hopeful it doesn't mean more meetings, just allowing the ability in case we do have to meet with the select board beyond April 1st. That's good to go.
Tom, do you have a comment, or was that you just voting with your? Gotcha.
Gotcha. So then it looks like we still would hopefully review and approve the minutes from January 25th, 2022, which I can bring on the screen.
One thing that I would just like to resurrect too is the, maybe before we go to the minutes, is just the parking fees on the residents. That, we've given the business owners a pretty big reduction in parking fees. And I think it would just be a nice compromise to enable more people to come and, maybe roll back the parking fees for residents. Either proportionately with the amount that the business owners are benefiting from, or just roll it back to $25, which is where it was. It was always historically a de minimis amount to just separate the difference between the residents and the people parking downtown from outside Reading, since the Reading residents are the ones paying the taxes to maintain all that property. So I guess that would be one proposal and compromise I'd like to see. I'd like to see Park kind of vote for.
Can I just say something, Bernie? I thought that the reason that we put the employee thing down was to match the residents. And I object to your comments that the businesses are the only one that are profiting or gaining anything from this entire parking issue. I think the residents gain greatly by having parking, period. The turnover is going to be great. It's all going to be very laid out, very great, very cleanly, and everyone's going to know where to park. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. And I think that it's very disingenuous for you to just think that the business owners are the only ones that are benefiting. And I believe we talked about the resident stickers, that it's the police department that comes up with the rates. Is that true, Christine?
Just a recommendation. It's a recommendation and a potential compromise, that's all.
No, we usually come up with how we give them out and the process and how many, but the rate is set by the select board.
So Bernie, you want us to present to the select board that we want to change the rates for the residents?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're
Are you bringing that up as a motion?
Yeah, I'm just recommending that the Park recommend that. Again, I think that the data that we showed, that Deputy Chief showed us a while ago, was that there are some 3,000 resident parking permits that were initially that used to be purchased. When the fees went up to 150, that number dropped off, I think, to 800, if I remember the numbers right. And so therefore, we've kind of made it more difficult for people to access parking. And obviously people, the more you discourage people from coming down, the more businesses, don't get the benefit of that. So I'm just trying to, suggest a compromise that maybe we consider that. There are a lot of people that need it. There are thousands of people that seem to need it, and we've got a few hundred employees that are benefiting, but not the few thousand people that.
So I will reiterate what we've discussed previously, which is that our resident parking stickers for commuter parking is still significantly cheaper than most surrounding communities that offer such a thing. So it is not overly burdensome. Also, many people previously, when it was only $25, bought it just for the hell of it because it was only $25. I don't think we're actually preventing anybody who needs it from using it. And yes, to Karen's point, we as a committee had agreed to try to make the amount even. The original proposal from Julie's team a couple years ago is to make employee parking free to further motivate employees to get out of the way of residents downtown. Then there was some concern that free or too inexpensive would be sort of not workable. And the other reason you only have 250 employee permits right now is because there are only 250 employee permits available right now. We aren't making more available. So again, we can't be comparing numbers of permits when they're regulated and managed differently. I don't personally care what either of the costs are. Let me make that clear. It's not a pricing issue for me, but we did as a committee try to come up with the idea that the residents permits and the employee permits were the same amount. That was what had been decided.
Well, that was what some people suggested, but that wasn't necessarily the.
The only thing I would add is that it's hard to compare numbers because the stickers used to be combined. So we don't know who was only purchasing for the combos years ago. So now people are they can purchase a compost only. So I'm not sure that it's a price reason. I mean, I know a few years ago when the price changed, there were obviously some residents upset by it. But I don't think that there's thousands of people not buying it. I think they're just getting compost only now.
I agree.
Helpful. Yeah, good point.
So no compromise on this?
I'm not recommending we raise lower the price for resident stickers. I think we leave it where it is.
Anybody else?
That's my opinion.
I feel like the select board spent a long time reviewing that, Bernie, and I'd feel like it's up to them, really. I mean, you could ask them to take another look, but I remember when they were reviewing it, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, they spent a long time on it, so. I mean,
I also don't think we're charged with that. I don't think something that could be brought to them in a different context.
Any other comments? Okay, let's move on, folks. What's the next item? We'll review the minutes.
I believe so. 1 second to pull those up as I'm typing the other ones.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I found that the market rate, right, for the MBTA owned and managed spaces there, they now sell, which I don't think they used to before, but they sell monthly passes at $105 a month. And so, according to them, right, the annual cost value of parking in downtown Reading is, over $1,200.
Yeah, I would agree, John. My employees pay $25, $28 a day to park. So maybe the market value of the employee parking, we should maybe bump that up to 1,200. Should we do that?
Sure.
I think there'd be any support for bumping up the employee passes to 1,200 a year.
No, not me.
No, okay. All right. Should we go to the minutes?
Hope you can see them on the screen. I think there's 2 highlighted areas just to review, and then obviously if there's comments throughout it, please do shout them out.
Colucci is, I think, Angela Colucci, C-O-L-U-C-C-I.
Again, 125 minutes, not the forum minutes. Don't know if
125, I'm sorry, okay. Okay, goes up.
Christine, since you're still here and this mentioned something you were clarifying, do you recall what it was you were noting about Washington Street? Must be similar to Arlington.
Sorry, I walked away for a second.
How could you walk away? This is riveting.
I gotta get these children to bed. Let's see. Oh yeah, Washington had it on both sides. That's what. Right, is that what you're asking? Yep.
Yes.
Oh no, it has parking on both sides. It had parking. It had the morning regulations on both sides.
Right.
Yep.
Bernie, do you recall this conversation?
Which page are you on now? I'm just trying to catch up
Page
with you.
4. Mr. Hoy noted that a friend has relevant expertise on studies and maybe what costs?
120, this is the 125 minutes, right?
Yep.
Right now I'm on, just want to know that as far as relevant expertise and, and the park, and the price per space was, I think that we were referencing a $50,000 per price, per spot cost. Is that right, John? And I think that my friend Brad said it was like about half that. About half the $50,000 cost.
That is what you said, yes.
Any other comments? You need anything else, Andrew, on this one?
Nope, those are my 2 highlights.
All in favor of accepting these as edited? Or should I have a motion first and then a second? Maybe we should do that.
Move to accept the minutes as edited.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved, so accepted.
Thank you. So I just want to jump back to your vote to request an extension beyond April 1st. I had thought maybe just asking for beyond April might be appropriate, but we might actually want to select a specific date if you guys have one in mind to request an extension to. That's May 1st, May something.
April 30th, is that what you're looking for?
2025.
That would work.
I think Julie and Andrew and any of the other staff, based on what you've seen us present, and Chris, how long do you think it will take them to take in all of our recommendations, all the dialogue that goes back and forth? Do you think it's going to take 2 full meetings? I'd hate to have us decide April 30th is the end And then we need a third, or, half of a third meeting, and that goes into May, and then I don't know what happens if we're not done.
Yeah, so I mean, you could add a buffer if you wanted to, or you could wait and see. I think you should account on at least 2 meetings. And so you can see, how it goes in March, and then at your April meeting with them, ask for an extension then. Or add a buffer, tonight to your request.
Yeah, one thing I'll say I've noticed about trying to get anything voted on during an election change, it's very hard. They always like to push it off a little further and if any select board members change around that time, they'll need time to catch up. And so I don't know the exact date that switches, Chris maybe does, but I do notice that it's hard to get a vote in around March and April.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it would be sometime after April 5th. So whatever meeting right after that, if anything.
I think you have a meeting on April 19th.
So yeah, it would probably be that one then.
Would that be the first meeting for new members?
Yes.
And to clarify another process point, Julie, just remind me, ultimately, because I'm, even though I'm delighted that PTTF is here with us tonight, isn't it ultimately that we are presenting a recommendation for the select board to then recommend to the PTTF, or is it the other way around?
No, the last stop is the select board. So
Okay.
and the way that your charge is written is that you're an advisory committee to the select board. So you run them all by us, get our feedback, we're all one big happy family. And then you take them to the select board, and they will know that there's staff support for the proposal.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So usually to a lot, we present what we want and then they decide if they want to have a hearing on it. So usually we present one meeting, explain what our traffic changes are recommended. They vote to put it to a hearing. So then we have to post the notice publicly for 2 weeks. So I don't know if the vote could be that end of March if they want to do it with the select board, right? I don't know, Julie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the public hearing would definitely be the second meeting. It could also be scheduled for the first meeting, but it wouldn't, the vote, I don't think would happen the first meeting. And those are things that we can work with the new town manager on. There's about a month between both meetings, which gives ample time for all the outreach that we would want to do and the public hearing notice and all that. And there's about a month between, more than a month between now and the first meeting. So we could work with the new town manager and try to figure out what he thinks is appropriate.
Okay, as long as we can vote at a meeting or request at a meeting with them to extend, that makes me more comfortable in case there's another who knows what's going to happen. So,
right.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
So we'll just wait. We'll go to the presentation and then make a recommendation. If they don't finish the business, we just recommend that they extend at that point as a contingency, right?
Well, I think Andrew's looking for us to extend it now to April 30th. And then at that time, we're going to vote to extend it farther. So we do need to extend it now because the second meeting definitely won't be in March. We're going to have to extend it past April 1st.
Correct.
And then we'd have to dissolve the committee as well. So that would be a subsequent one.
Oh, I think we just spontaneously combust, Chris.
Yeah.
What was the problem with we originally had a meeting scheduled for February, right? To present to the select board. What happened with that
We
meeting?
couldn't get on the agenda.
I gave you the wrong date. And then when I realized the right date, I later found out the agenda is full.
Okay.
So that's February 15th, which is this coming Tuesday. It's not available. So we'll say you'll vote for April 30th for now, and then see where that leads.
I agree.
Yep, that's what I would do. Yes.
I'm fine with that.
So do we need to vote on the motion or?
The motion for the extension?
I think we just requested, I think we already did that. I think it was just a date that we were looking for. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, I think an amendment to that motion is fine.
And did
Does
you vote
everybody
on
agree
the
that we
minutes? Did you vote on the minutes of January 25th?
They did, yeah.
Okay, great.
Do we have any other minutes to review as the forum minutes? Do we need to do that?
Yep.
And do we need to respond to the correspondence? Do we want to look at the correspondence that Julie and Andrew forwarded today? We had one from Bill McEnany and one other gentleman.
I was just gonna ask you that. Harry Frechette.
Yep. Forgive me for not looking at our website over the last couple of days. Have we posted or do we intend to post just like the full survey data and just make that public? Is that a thing?
That is up there.
It is up there. So can we direct Henry Frechette to that?
Yes.
Yep, and I'll also update some of the spreadsheets based on tonight's discussion so that they're up to date.
Andrew.
And regarding Bill's email about the parking, I don't know if everybody's familiar with this, thanks to the handy book that Jay shared earlier in our time together this fall. I started doing some reading about reversing the way you park in those angled spots. Do people have views on this concept? It certainly is infinitely safer. It is, but it's a.
I love that concept, but I did read the objection to it as far as it's better when it's a one-way street as opposed to a two-way street, but getting out of those spaces is really hard. I would love
As
that.
they currently are, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a great suggestion. I just don't know if it's something that they can do. Or maybe they could think about doing it in the future in some places downtown.
I thought Ryan had a view on this earlier that there was an issue. You have a comment on that, Ryan?
I can share some of the cons for them and pros. I mean, obviously, reverse angle parking primarily is better on a one-way for the sole purpose that when you have opposing traffic coming across, they have a tendency to kind of have a jut right in. So they cross traffic kind of going on a long head-on angle. So that's sort of a big opposition there. The pro is that obviously your field of vision coming out of the spot is better, especially if you have bicyclists on that road. So what I would recommend is that, I mean, we're going to be looking at that downtown area anyway when we redo Haven Street, is we can certainly bring up this concept during that time. But I think you're still going to have that issue with that with that two-way traffic there, of having that traffic, just someone pulling directly in from the opposite side of the street, which could potentially be an issue. And then the other thing is there's always a learning curve that has to happen because it is a different movement than everyone is used to. So there's a big educational piece that has to happen with that too. So not sort of any opposition, just comments, just to think about.
Very helpful.
Yeah, thank
Jay,
you.
I imagine you have thoughts.
No, I think Ryan hit the nail on the head pretty well with the benefits and the cons. I mean, I can get into the very technical safety benefits of reverse angle parking, but I think Ryan hit that well. While it's correct that, you know, you could have somebody who's not so familiar just kind of jut through and park head in the opposite direction. Usually there's signs that say back in parking only, and that's the sort of thing that you can definitely ticket. I've definitely seen that happen in areas in Charlotte. But that's definitely something that, you know, should be considered, I guess, because I can see that safety issue. So maybe education hopefully can get people to get through that. Those are really my only comments.
I just had a quick comment. After reading that, when I was going down Haven Street the last 2 times, I tried to visualize how that would be doing a back in, and in my experience going down Haven Street, the cars just like snug up so tight behind you. I don't know how you could do that. And also Haven Street's really pretty narrow for being a 2-way street. And I don't know. I guess it sort of seems like you're trading it off. It might be easier to pull out, but it would be hard to get in. And the way we have it now, it's easy to pull in and it's a little tricky to get out, but I just don't think, I couldn't see myself doing it. So I was just on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fair thing to say, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, you agree with me?
I agree with everybody. I'm very agreeable. I just got back from vacation, so I hadn't had a vacation in a long time.
Okay.
So you're right. There is definitely a trade-off between one movement. People don't reverse as well as forward, which I think is a driver's education problem. I mean, people should be able to reverse their car properly, but you're absolutely right. It's a more difficult maneuver. The benefit of having that more difficult maneuver at the beginning and not the end is that you're controlling the flow in that direction, because while it's true a car could potentially butt up against you, ideally, if you have your turn signal on, you're going to be able to stop the traffic and then do your reverse maneuver. And then the visibility of being able to just see when you're leaving, the fact that doors, if you're loading kids in, are facing the sidewalk and not the street, the fact if you're loading groceries or whatever in the trunk, is all facing the sidewalk. Ideally, those pros should outweigh, the more challenging of reversing out into traffic that may not be expecting you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, yeah, the geometry needs to be looked at for sure. And I haven't done any analysis on that, or, what the lane lengths need to be and turning radius and stuff, but yeah.
So it sounds like, to Ryan's point, this sounds like a great thing for the Haven Depot area redesign to just keep in the back of the mind when all that is happening. Not really an action item for us, but I'm glad we took a minute to look at it.
And Ryan, if you want to, I don't know if you talked to Somerville at all, they have them down there. If you're curious about their experiences with it, I'm more than happy to introduce you to them or tell you who to reach to, if that's helpful. Eventually they will more. So, but in this weird interim period, that'd be my hope.
I always thought that it would be better to have the back-in parking at the train station, because it seems that when you're getting out at the end of the day, it's a lot safer to pull out forward. And it's probably a lot easier to back in at the beginning of the day. But the town requires head in, and I think that's just to be able to check the stickers. And that's probably an enforcement question. Maybe it's easier to have somebody walking in front of the cars. I don't understand why that's always been the case down in the depot. I don't know if Christine has a view on that, or Ryan.
We could always change the sticker to a placard. I'm not sure if there was a lot of accidents before when people were backing in. I could do some research and see why they changed it to that a long time ago.
I'd be kind of curious of that.
Sure.
Any other discussion on this, or should we have one more set of minutes to go over?
So I did add Mr. Colucci's last name above and here on page 2.
At the end of that paragraph, Andrew, I think I just had a comment that I would add, and because I had made a comment there. I'm not sure if it was there or at the following one of the later comments, but I think I made a note that you could say that Mr. Horn noted the postmark was built with a ratio of parking to units of 1.44, then comma, greater than the current 1.25 requirement.
Sorry, do you know what page that is on?
Yeah, the where you filled in the name for Angela Colucci. That same paragraph. Just at the very end, I was going to add that Mr. Horn noted the postmark was built with a ratio. Let me know when you're ready. So right after.
Yeah, I don't think it's in the minutes, Andrew. I think he just wants to add it on as the last
I'm
sentence.
adding, I want to add
Oh.
a sentence to the end of that paragraph
Now I get it. Okay,
where it says Mr. Colucci.
go ahead.
Mr. Horn noted the postmark was built with a ratio of parking to units of 1.44, comma, greater than the current 1.25 requirement. Greater than the current 1.25 requirement.
Is this
Comma.
a private parking issue?
Comma, but the residents needed at least a ratio of 1.86.
Did you want to add that that was based on a in-house survey? Is that what it's based on Angelo's survey or?
Yeah, based on Angelo's data that he provided to Park.
Did his data include all the residents or just the ones that answered him?
The 1.86 refers to just the people he served. May be a greater number if he was able to survey all the residents, but he wasn't.
I think that needs to be put in there then.
So the number, so the 1.86 could.
But a portion of the residents needed a ratio of 1.86. We don't know what the whole building really needs because he didn't interview everybody.
No, that's assuming that everybody has. That
I
assumes that
agree with Karen.
everybody has. That all the parking spaces that were built were taken.
Well, let's not, right, these are meeting minutes. Let's not make up things that weren't said, right? For these meeting minutes, it was said that, you know, the 1.86, it was implied that it was based off, you know, it was that at the time, right? It was implied it was based off of that gentleman's survey with all the problems that survey includes. So I think we should communicate that and leave it there.
Sounds good.
That's good.
Any other comments? Something about page 5 where you were looking for information on Ms. Binda's.
Yes. I cleaned this up as we were ongoing.
I just wasn't sure if I captured that correctly. If that's what she was saying.
I think that's right.
Okay.
I think that's right. She didn't think we needed to spend money on a study.
Did she have what she wanted to spend the money on?
She's a town, there's just a lot of other things in town that she thinks the money would be better well spent.
So I just think you need to fix the first sentence
She's aware that we're indentured servitude servants.
She was wondering, maybe she was wondering whether the recommendation was to spend the money for the lot.
She was curious of if there was some change that occurred that was driving us to consider this.
And she
That's
also wanted to confirm that it would be something brought in front of town meeting, not that we were
correct.
deciding. So we
Correct.
did confirm for her that it would go to
Yes.
town meeting. So that was her important part.
But the first sentence there was about understanding if we had information about parking demand.
Yeah, she basically agreed with what Ms. Kaufman had said,
Right.
which I think I had put in there in that first sentence.
Yeah.
And get all this stuff.
Any other comments? Any motion to accept them as edited?
Motion to accept the minutes as edited.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you. They are accepted. With our next item here. Are there any, I see that there, I'm not sure. I have everybody in my participant list here, but is there any member of the public that we need to hear from tonight? Jane and Chris, are those staff members? I probably should know that. If I don't, I apologize.
They're from staff, and
Okay.
anyone, if there was anyone here from the public, which I think there might have been earlier, like besides George, they've left. Looks like they've
Okay.
left. I was going to ask, so going forward, since you don't have any meetings scheduled before your meeting with the select board, which is great, who should staff work with to prepare the information that will be presented to the select board?
Are we able to largely build off the presentation that we used last week?
Definitely. And we can incorporate any additional changes that were made tonight, if that's the direction that you all want to go, with kind of with the same thing that was presented last at the forum. And then, does that seem right?
Yeah, are we gonna have to present like street by street information?
So yeah, so because they are in charge of the traffic regulations and the any changes to the street segments get voted on individually, we will prepare all the motions for them for all of those changes, and they will have to review them street by street.
Okay. I remember when you did it before, you had a lot of
Mhm.
had stacks of paper with you, so. I think we just need to be prepared that we're gonna go street by street.
Yeah, Christine and I can put all that together like we did last time. It'll be maybe less than last time because of all the areas you're leaving unregulated. So
I think so. Welcome.
Here's hoping we're the whole agenda if we're going to that street. Apologies in advance to the select board.
So yeah,
I
if
do
you
think
want to use.
Andrew's- I do think Andrew's spreadsheet is very helpful. Is, you know, if you have it alongside the maps, it really, and it's, I think if it's color coded as we discussed, it will really help just getting people to focus on what the changes are, which, you know, we can just highlight those.
Yeah, I can update both and the maps that I noticed some
Yep.
issues on tonight.
We have a section for just unrelated to park information that we've sort of been receiving along, like for instance, the payment in lieu for parking or reconsidering permit costs or just other things that we've come across during these meetings that don't pertain to what we were tasked with. Just to pass that on to the select board. I know there were a few things in the survey that were not related directly to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think I could add some language, say ADA spaces, for example, and other
Yeah.
items that you guys have discussed.
Right, and the reverse angle parking. Yeah, we can put together a list of things we heard some interest in, just so they're aware that we're going to be that there might be things that come up again in the future.
Okay.
I also had that laundry list a long time ago that was not really fully related, but somewhat related. Okay, it wasn't really that related at all. Is that something that can also be shared with them?
Yeah, Jay, and part of what you missed last week is we did have a lot of people from the public saying, let's make sure we're also looking at walkability and alternative transportation and rethinking, you know, making a more pedestrian focused downtown versus a car focused. And I think that's kind of dovetailing with what you're getting at.
Yeah, Liz, that's great. If there's that type of reception, then I'm definitely happy to help on that.
Oh, so you're gonna lead the committee?
On
I think you meant
walkability?
helping on the comments on the deck, but yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, but I'm gonna put a time limit on it.
Well, I was just thinking of all the things that had been said, like from day one up until now, not like adding more, but I guess, I don't know. I know, Jay, you had a lot, so.
I had a list that wasn't really super relevant to the to this stuff. So I
Yeah.
mean, I would love to share that and explain some thoughts beyond that. Not, you know, whatever the group thinks is appropriate.
I think there is a walkability Reading committee already, isn't there, Julie? Or am I making this up?
No, there's walkable Reading. If you want to get on that.
Can get on that.
I
Can we
think
give
that
them information?
for
Megan?
sure. Yeah. And I know some people who are on it and they like host walks and stuff and they're pretty active. Some do some of the gardening stuff and I see them all around town.
Do they make recommendations to the select board on anything that they see, or do they just tell you in passing? It'd be nice, you know, can we do this?
I have seen them go to the select board with ideas. I don't know what their like specific charge like enables them to do or not do. I could look into that if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Sure.
And then when we make all this money with the kiosks, we're gonna have spending it.
Right. And like figuring out who will oversee that situation, something else to figure for down the road, I guess.
Right, for the select board to figure out.
On those, you know, the on the kiosks and there were some comments on the forum with respect to the business owners looking for 4 hours in that lot. I don't know if we haven't talked about that.
They were looking for 2 hours in that Brandy Street lot. I completely forgot about that. I thought that was something that would be worth talking about. but is it too late for us to talk about it? Or is that something the select board would talk about?
I think
Well,
it'd be
that's
part of our
another-
recommendations.
It's related to the kiosk, like how it would function. And I think that you probably should talk about whether you would want to recommend allowing up to 2 hours in the free in the Brandy Court lot. And then the other thing that I was thinking about, which I think Bernie just touched on, was do you want to cap the total amount of time that could be spent in the lot at 4 hours? Or let it be all, like someone could park there all day if they wanted. And I could see some pros and cons to each. But I think I might be in favor of putting an upper limit on time so that like employees and commuters like definitely can't park there all day.
You could
I feel
jack
like
the prices up.
well, I feel like we talked about that after a certain amount of time, instead of $1 an hour, it turned to $2 an hour. Like it was an increased amount. And then I did some math where it would be exorbitant for commuters to park there all day because it would cost them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It would be cheaper to park in Boston by the time they were done with whatever they were doing. I could be exaggerating a little bit.
Right, and that's actually what staff had proposed a couple of years ago, is just having it escalate after 4 hours. So that's one way to do it. You could do it by pricing. So that's just something to figure out if you want to make a specific recommendation on.
I'm in favor of increasing the price as the hours go on.
Me
And
too.
we also
Second
talked
that.
about allowing people to park there overnight.
And Christine said that was not doable.
Because aren't people doing that? I mean, it's unrestricted after, is it unrestricted after 5? Or at least they don't have to pay after 5. That's what the proposal was.
That's right, but right now between, is it either midnight and 6 or 1 and 6, people cannot park there overnight.
1 to 6, I think.
Yeah, so the question is, should we allow people to park there overnight, especially given that they're having trouble finding places to park overnight?
Well, I think as Chris was reviewing last week, the proposal from the select board, they're already piloting this effort in the Lincoln Street lot. And I think that's how they wanted to take their first stab at dealing with the overnight parking. They sort of had broken that off as a separate
How's
from
that
us.
going? Do we know how that's going? Is Christina
It hasn't
still-
gone yet because they have
Oh.
their public hearing for that on the
Oh,
15th.
okay. All right.
But I think that the 2 doctors were looking for, to allow their patients, the 2 hours was not enough for their patients. I think that's what the issue was.
I think they said 1 hour wasn't enough, but that 2 is what they were asking for.
I do want to add to that as well, that I think they were thinking that if 1 or 2 hours were free, their patients might not need to use the kiosks because they're free hours, but that's, I think, a misunderstanding because you still have to input into the kiosk so that the police enforcement knows that you're there and you have these free hours available. And I just wanted to clarify that first.
I agree. She made it seem like they couldn't run out after an hour, and I didn't want to talk about it during the forum because the education part of the kiosk is going to be a really big learning curve. But honestly, I think for $1, I don't think it matters. I think an hour is an hour, and they have to enter the information anyway. I think people are under the misconceived notion that they just park and walk away, and if they're gonna be there longer than an hour, they have to go back to their car. So now that everybody's okay with the kiosks for the most part, I think the education part will alleviate. They don't have to move their car or leave after an hour. So I agree. So I thought the 2 hours was a good idea, but now that I started thinking about it, I'm like, for $1, it is what it is. So.
Yeah, for me, it's the same thing. If I can go to Venetian Moon or something and pay $1 to park, knowing I have a parking spot outside that door, like super close, I'll pay it every single day of the week. It's more of the contractors or something else, anybody parking longer than 4 hours, I think we have to increase something exponentially to deter some person from just parking there all day for like $4 by the time they get busted kind of scenario. So something like that, where it's 4 hours and above is, I don't know, some tiered thing. Because I think the only time you get to the 4 hour mark is, the haircut, beauty salon places where you're getting cut, color, whatever, stuff that I don't get done, so.
Come on, Chris, we know you get a full
Now,
bill.
currently, sometime in the future, we'll see. But other than, I mean, yeah, it's gonna be some sliding scale. I haven't really thought of it because it seems like it's gonna be like some massive penalty where it's like $10 an hour after 4. Just seems crazy to me, but these contractors will just take the tickets, like if it isn't something like that. So I'm curious what other people think.
I agree. Julie, can you remind us did you guys have a specific dollar recommendation back in the day?
Yeah, I think our recommendation was $1 an hour, and then after 4 hours, it would go to $2 an hour. And that's like at one time I could do math. Like I want to say, if you stayed there all day, like you stayed there for 8 hours, right? Then so it's 8 plus 12. Is it $12?
12, yeah.
So,
Um,
that's right.
So I don't know if did I get it right, Andrew? Was that what we had proposed?
I believe so, if I'm digging into the memory hard.
So Chris, you're thinking something a little zestier after that 4 o'clock.
Yes, that's, I might pay that myself. Like,
Right.
yeah, no, it's gotta be something more. It's gotta, even 25 for that entire 8 hours seems ludicrous to me.
I agree.
For the people that are gonna take it. But then you get into the like sticker shock. You're like, what are these people thinking? But it's to deter, maybe we could split the difference and make it everything above 5 hours is $10 an hour past 5 hours, something extreme.
I think $5 an hour after 5 is better than 10. I mean, because it's potentially, it adds up. If they're going to park all day, $5 an hour.
But that would be
going from 1 to 5. Even 1
yeah,
to
so that would be because the cutoff, they can't monitor, they can't go past 5 because there's no enforcement. That would just be like what, $18? 5 times 3, isn't it 18? I don't know. Whatever it is, it's still too low of a number.
Well, maybe how about $5
What
after
did we-
4 hours?
What did we already agree on? I mean, I feel like we're opening this whole thing up that we already agreed to, and now we're
Never had this
reviewing.
conversation.
Yeah, I
we
don't
didn't talk
think
about
that you
the upper
have
level, beyond
done
the
We just said
abstract.
$1 an hour. After an hour was $1 an hour. That's what we agreed on.
And then we discussed trying to figure out for construction vehicles or people parking all day. So it was always going to be discussed. We just haven't discussed it.
Right. That was part of the feedback from the forum also, Bernie, people concerned about construction vehicles.
Jay?
So it should ultimately be based on occupancy. So what is the occupancy that we want to achieve in the lot? And then you price it that way. That's sort of like the new parking or pricing strategies that like Boston is using for like 80% occupancy on any block. So we might want to think a little bit about that, what we want.
I think I like Jay's idea. I kind of like this because the kiosk will know if there's 30 free open spots, then what do we care that the contractor has now parked there? At least we are making money from it. But if there's 6 spots left, oh wait, yeah, I guess the only time that matters is the scale. It has to scale based on occupancy for larger, I don't know, now we're getting too complicated.
Yeah, no, you're not going to be able to like dynamically change it,
Yeah.
but it's something that you can like, you price it one particular way, you find out if it's too low or too high, and then you do it based on the occupancy that you can. So that's,
I think we're going to do that anyway. I guess we're just going to review, or someone's going to review it after 6 months, a year, just to see how it's been panning out. But
I guess I would suggest starting simple,
yes.
since the whole goal here, right, is to get this, to manage parking through pricing, right? So to get the kiosk in place in the first place is like the goal.
yeah,
And so I don't think you would want to obscure that with lots of complicated things that are hard for people to grasp.
But I think the point here, right, that we're grappling with on the details that we probably shouldn't, but whether there's agreement on using pricing as a strategy beyond 4 hours, or just a restriction of parking beyond 4 hours. And I guess one of my thoughts is, so someone parks there 6 hours, you know, is there going to be, would we start towing? I think, but I think it's probably a better pricing is probably a better strategy than towing.
Yes.
You know, that type of enforcement. Just thinking that through. You know,
once we put something out there that's easy, we'll be able to just like get the data, see how it is, and then you'll be able to kind of tweak it in 5 or 6 months or so.
The
Yeah, I mean,
Ryan principle.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm okay with doing the $5 an hour after 4 hours and then tweak it beyond the fact. I mean, that would end up being the $20, which I still think is way too low, but perhaps there's not going to be a construction person issue and then the whole thing's moot anyway. So, but it has to be something. I mean, we can't just, it just can't be free reign back there for like $4 a day.
The data will help with that.
Yeah.
So I've heard 2 people say $5 an hour after 4 hours. Does that seem
I
supportable?
think it's making it way more complicated, and you're going to try to explain this to people. It's going to get pretty aggravating, but.
The
But
Can we
isn't
leave
this
this-
right? This committee, right? This is going to be a dynamic pricing. We should not be establishing this committee
Yeah.
shouldn't be establishing the pricing, right? Because
Just
it's going to change, you know, in a year or two, right? I think that this committee, right? The guidance is that we need to manage by price and not by hours of restrictions, right? It's crazy for us to get into, you know, should it be 75 cents or $1 or $1.25, right? Inflation happens, blah, 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 that's all going to change. So
I think, John, though, we do have to present the select board with something tangible to react to as like an initial, you know, they can make ultimately whatever decision they want. But I think we should come in with that recommendation of the community right now is thinking first hour free, $1 an hour up until 4 hours, and then $5, but do what you will. Oh,
That's
select
fair.
board.
I also
think
I think that if we're going to say managing by pricing is the way to do it, that then it needs to be clear that you have to be careful with how you do that, because if it's just $1 an hour all day, that's not necessarily going to achieve the same result, that the result you want, which maybe would be achieved by escalating it to $5 after 4 hours.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, Julie, that's what I was saying, the occupancy, figuring out what, if you want 80% occupancy, 90% occupancy, whatever it is what you want to do to get what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I think that's the after the fact thing that everyone keeps, you know, like whoever is going to be in charge of it, it's staff or whoever it ends up being, that you're going to look at how it's been over the course of the month, et cetera, make some recommendations, leave it the same. I think for us, we hashed out the $1 an hour thing at the forum, so people are kind of aware of it, the first hour free scenario. It's just, we didn't take into account the people that are going to abuse it, which is to be the longer than 4 hour people. So
Isn't the lot marked 4 hours maximum now?
I believe CVS is.
It is, but that's because we don't need that now. That was
That was the last attempt at doing something different downtown.
right.
Yeah, I was just reading about Back Bay in Boston. They did what's called surge pricing to try to keep the occupancy lower than 100%. I can try to share some links at some point. I'll have to do more research on it though, if it's helpful.
Yeah.
I think the ultimate goal is not the money. It's just getting people in and out of here and just not having someone abuse it. You know, the money thing, eventually we're getting it back. It's more of just controlling and seeing if this really makes a big dent. It's essentially what it comes down to.
Well, so when Boston did it, they weren't doing it for the money either. They were doing it because people were trolling around on the streets looking for parking, spending up to 15 minutes versus going and trying to get cheap on-street parking versus going into the lots. And so it was clogging the streets. And so that's why they increased the price to try to keep the occupancy at 80% on any block so that you'd always have a spot, and it was priced that way. So it's a traffic management solution, a parking management solution, not a money driver.
Mhm. Okay, so do we feel comfortable putting on the presentation, first hour free, $1 an hour after that, $5 after 4, select board, we just want to, yeah, we're trying to control behavior, which is the whole thing with the kiosks in the first place. That is our recommended starting point. Per the Ryan principle, we expect the PTTF to review this on an ongoing basis. We jiggy with that?
Is it
I
$5?
still think it's too complicated. You're going from no parking, no fees to, I mean, we're sort of ignoring well, there's a point that says people don't really need to park down there for more than 2 hours, period. And that's the majority of it. And I think Tom's been observing that because already that we've got enforcement, the problem seems to have gone away for the most part anyway. So I think we're trying to.
Yeah, is there a downside to us limiting CBS lot to 4 hours? And that is it. Other than that, you're getting a ticket, whatever the ticket may be, whatever that price is. Like, what is the downside to just doing that? $1 an hour up to 4 hours, and then you're getting the ticket after that. You're gonna move.
I think that's complicated. I think that's, yes, I think it's easier to just say, pull in, free hour, park, pay after that. They've logged it into their phone. I don't think there's a reason to cut it off at 4 hours. The whole goal of the kiosk is to make it dummy proof and easy. So you plug in your phone, who cares? I could go to a story time at Liz's place with a cup of coffee and spend 5 hours there and and go to dinner and go to lunch. Like, that was the purpose of the whole thing, is that you can just park and do whatever it is you want. We don't want to penalize them for enjoying downtown. That to me would be what you would be doing.
So I guess a thought would be, to Bernie's point, what we presented to the larger community was first hour free, $1 an hour thereafter. So taking another angle at the Ryan principle, what if we led with that? And then if we suddenly found construction vehicles or similar were abusing it, then a few months down the road, the PTTF decides, okay, we need to do volume pricing after 4. But maybe we come out of this with the simple $1 an hour thing, because that also helps the community ease into a paid solution when there hasn't been one before. What do we think of that?
I think that's good. I think that as long as we explain to the select board that it is possible to change it as many times, as many ways as we want, so that if parking becomes abused, our recommendation is after 4 hours, increase it to $5 an hour after that. And that, because then you're covering the people that are worried about construction vehicles, and, I agree with you. But I do think we need to mention to them,
yeah, that's
also another avenue.
So
yeah, that the kiosks provide future motivation strategies.
Right.
The good news is 20% of the select board now already knows.
I'm fine with reverting it and keeping it the $1 an hour, like you just mentioned, and then just have it be reviewable after 90 days or something, someone from town staff or whatever, or reports from the parking enforcement officer, hopefully by then, or, the PTTF. So I'm fine with it.
I do think it's important that we start raising it so that people are aware of it and they're not surprised. So everyone now knows it's going to be $1 an hour, but I think it's a really good dialogue to say, we can use this to our benefit by trying to prohibit construction vehicles by parking there, by changing the rates after 4 hours. And I think it's a win-win that way, because you're letting them know we have the possibility to fix it, because construction vehicles are very sensitive to everybody downtown. So at least this is a way of explaining to them, we have options available should that become a problem, so that it's not dropping it on them. you know,
Yeah,
all of
it's
it,
a great idea. Socialize it.
right?
So do we know that this is going to be a problem with long-term parkers with our new solution, or is this sort of a problem that we're anticipating? Are we trying to solve a problem that we're not actually sure exists? I guess is my question.
So
And
there
I'm
have
just-
been some challenges with construction vehicle parking in the downtown when large projects are happening. So I think people are, so we've heard from a number of people like, what about construction vehicles? And it's not currently a problem. It has been, it will be, and hopefully this will provide a tool to mitigate it. But I think there's also the super secret, nobody owns it lot on the way to Market Basket. That is where the town is trying to like make construction vehicles go, right?
I just wanted to say, so assuming town meeting approves the kiosk, it would still be at least a year before they'd be installed, right? So there'd be a window of time for the public to prepare, right?
So assuming the select board likes the idea and then it still stays on the warrant, right? And then town meeting approves it. The schedule I put together would be for a rollout in January of 2023. So it's not quite a year, but it's a decent amount of time. And definitely like if it's more challenging than I'm anticipating, could be longer. One thing I'm just like trying to work through in my head based on my own personal experience though, is the notion that the first hour is always free in a kiosk, even if you stay longer than that. Which has not been my personal experience with how they work. So in my experience, you get the hour free if you're only staying an hour. So I'm just wondering if other people have had the, because you keep referring to first hour free and then $1 after that. I don't know that that's, maybe they can be programmed that way.
No, I was trying to describe it pricing tier as opposed to experience of what actually happens when you park. I was just shorthanding the conversation. So I agree with you. It's free if you are there for less than an hour, but if you're there for longer, you're paying for $1 for all of the hours.
Right, because I think that when you engage with the kiosk, and if you just say an hour, but then you have to go back and pay, then it will charge you for that first hour as well. But I think like potentially the only way you could get that first hour free and then stay longer is if you didn't say you were there for that first hour and then you went back out to your car, or maybe you moved. I guess the moving wouldn't work if it's license plate based, but I think if you park and then you go to the kiosk and you say, I'm here and I want an hour free, but then you use your phone after an hour and you add more time, it charges you for that first hour. But I don't
That makes
drive
sense.
and use kiosks like probably as much as the average person. So
I think it's up to an hour is free, and then
Right.
2 hours is $2 and 3 hours is $3 is how that would work. And then that would pay the
If you're there
kiosk
for
off.
4 hours, you pay $3.
no.
No,
No,
you pay
4
$4.
Because
I think
only-
that's
they're
the
only
way the
getting
ones-
benefit if
I
you're
think that's
there.
the way the ones work in Beverly, like you're saying, and I think their rate is 50 cents. And right, if you stay the first half hour, it's free. But if you stay an hour, you pay the full 50 cents.
So one question I have actually is the user experience. When do they put in their credit card information? So are they going to put in their credit card information into the app, even if they're going to not stay an hour?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
so if you have the app, for anyone who has the app, when you set the app up, you put it in, so it's like saved in there always, right? If you're not using the app and you're just using the kiosk, that's a great question, Jay. I mean, I think
You put,
I think you do have to put it in, right?
I used
Yeah.
one in Maine recently and I think I had to put my credit card in at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have my credit card saved in those apps for sure. I guess the weird thing that I think, the curiosity that I have is that say someone's coming, they know they're only gonna be there for 30 minutes and they have to put their credit card in to not be charged.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
So
Because in Beverly, you definitely don't have to do that because I have parked in Beverly recently and it was like, if you're not going to be here, like, don't do anything. And so I didn't.
but the challenge is if you're there for longer than an hour, then you don't have they don't have your credit card to ping.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess
So it's just something to think about.
I would say, I guess that's something we probably don't need to solve tonight.
But just
We
for
know
like,
that something needs to happen and we'll learn about it when the actual kiosks are.
yeah, well, actually though, I do think it matters because of how it's messaged, right? Because if you continue to say first hour free, then $1 after that, and people have the impression, like Bernie just said, 4 hours is $3. Like, we just don't want to give people the wrong idea.
It's up to, we should
Right.
change the language to up to the first hour free.
And then I can figure out the details of how the whole credit card thing works.
But if you're just using cash,
Yeah,
I'm sure somehow these kiosk people have this figured out. They seem to know something.
probably do.
Tom's got maybe Tom, Tom has the answer. Let's go to Tom up there.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes.
No, I don't know if I have the answer, but I'm hoping
Tom.
that with what I've seen and experienced, and I don't have to remind everybody what my stand on this subject matter is, so I won't take up your time on that. But trying to work in the idea of compromise or think that this issue is going to come. I think we should probably, or if not us, somebody should probably schedule a kiosk seminar. And if we've got 13 people on this call right now, and I sense a lot of questions, and there seems I'm not getting any firm direction of presentation of how these kiosks are going to work if a challenge comes from the select board when this committee walks up there. That's one. I think a seminar just on kiosks, and maybe a lot of these questions can be answered ahead of time. Because the other thing is, I think we should develop what our mission statement is. What is the mission statement, and stick to it for what the kiosk project is. I've heard that it's for moving traffic. It's not for making money. But yet, if that's the case, then I question, because I hear someone saying, well, if we're having a little meeting or a little time or a little story time or a presentation downtown, it seems like you're giving our business has employees that only work 2-3 hours. Those employees will say for 2 or 3 hours, maybe for the extra $1-2, I'll invest and still stay in my parking spot downtown. And if that's what we want, I thought we wanted to try and move the employees. The other thing, Chris, I'd like to say, you're going to get your key parking spot at Venetian Moon anyway, because if I heard it correctly, they're going to stop enforcement at 5 o'clock. Well, Venetian Moon doesn't open till after 5 o'clock. So if we're going to go with the kiosk, and I would be in favor of going with it, and that's what I mean, make it a revenue generating. In other words, make it till 9 o'clock at night. I was down there this past Saturday. You couldn't get a parking spot in that lot. And yes, we know a lot of them were probably going to Bunratty or going to Venetian Moon. And that's solid revenue that's going to be generated that we should not pass up. Because my experience up in Maine, I've gone to Ogunquit and places like that up there using the kit. Most of it, the revenue seems to be generated at night there and take it to that.
yeah, I can work on getting that information for you all. It's no problem.
That's why if Julie wants to get that, I don't mind reviewing it and presenting that part, or, I mean, she can or whatever, just, I don't know how much time you got, but I don't mind going over those options too, because it's, maybe there's some techie stuff that I can extrapolate out of there.
The other thing that I think we need to be clear about is what the license plate retention policy is going to be. I'm fairly uncomfortable, having the town collect people's license plates. Everybody that goes in and out of that lot, they're going to have their license plate tracked. And I just don't think that we should be holding those license plates in our system for anything longer than a day. I don't know if there's any other issues there, but I think as soon as they pay their fee and they don't get a ticket, we shouldn't be holding their license plates. And I don't know if that's part of the contract with the vendor, that they will monetize that license plate data. I think that we have to be really careful that they do not, under any circumstances, monetize or somehow use that license plate data on all of our residents for their own benefit. Without, because there's no way that you're going to be able to control that the residents are going to be able to control that.
I think I remember Christina saying something, Bernie, about that it would be deleted. I don't remember if she said it was daily or weekly, but I don't think she's still on anymore. But does anybody else remember
I think
her?
what I remember her saying was that the town already collects license plate data in various ways. I don't know if it's through camera recognition or whatever, but I think she said that they keep that data for 30 days.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's what I remember. I might be misremembering, but I think I'm pretty good when I remember stuff like that. Not everything.
Sure, there's some good YouTube videos regarding kiosks as well.
I've just been poking around looking for some, Dan. I'm just having a hard time finding one that's showing the first free hour. But I may actually drive up to Beverly tomorrow and just live that experience and see what happens.
Going this weekend, so I can also let you know.
Cool.
So regarding the
stuff.
data retention, that's something that we work out with the vendor, and then I'll because depending on what level of data that's collected and how long it have it, will impact how we know how well the kiosks are working, right? So my understanding is that from certain vendors, like with the license plate reader, it will save a certain portion of a license plate, but not a full license plate, so that you can attach that license plate to how long that person stayed. So then you have data about utilization and length of stay. So which could help PTTF decide if any changes are needed, if we're achieving that 80% occupancy or not, like Jay mentioned. And then the police department already has a license plate data collection policy that we could use as a starting point and then refine it as needed, so that we're making sure that users' privacy is protected, while at the same time we can retain some of the data that we would need to know if we need to adjust the kiosks.
I mean, I don't see why you need to have everybody's license plate to figure that out. You either know that the lot's turning over or it's not. You don't need to have people's license plates to know if a person is coming back there or whatever. I just don't understand why we need that. And that's again why the contracts, why it's important for us to understand what's in the contracts. Because if the contracts are worded such that they're going to give us this price if they get to monetize a lot of license plate data, and if they don't get to monetize the license plate data, then our cost is going to be much higher. That's something that, if we're going to recommend this to town meeting, we kind of really need to know that, so the town meeting can make an intelligent decision.
Because they're going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just read some nasty stories about license plates being, license plates are collected everywhere, and what they do with it is not always the right thing to do.
So Julie's going to get that information from the vendor, right? So
Yeah.
do we have something else to go over? I just, right, can we move along?
Liz and I, you want to make the presentation as a select board, and we'll review the docs with the staff?
Should we break it into chunks as we did with the public forum?
I'm not sure that there's that much to do, really. It's just sort of the same thing that we did last time.
That's what I mean. Present it the same way we did
No, I'm
last time.
talking
So-
about the last time we were at the select board, we just went through
Yeah,
it.
but we are going to be reusing essentially what we used at the public forum last week. We were just saying, so it'd be great to have Karen doing, basically how we just did it before. And then we get more of the committee involved, and it's going to be a lot of, now that we're going through it line by line, it's going to be a lot of data. Hi, Jay.
Hi. I just want to go back to the privacy issue. Because I think there's benefit to finding a way to anonymize the license plate data, but still keeping it as a unique identifier for travel purposes. And this is being done like so much with so many different groups and whatnot. And I'll just throw out a quick story. About 15 years ago, I was actually working on some technology like this through Wendy's, where I was actually looking at collecting drivers, the license plates through OCR recognition, which is just text recognition through camera systems for marketing purposes. I only point that out because it's just like, this stuff is just everywhere, and camera collection is just, I mean, the license plate collection is everywhere. So I wouldn't want to miss out on the opportunity to at least have some of that data, even if we can do it in a scrubbed, anonymized way.
Maybe they're
I think
already
it-
doing it that way, you know what I mean? To see, because I'm sure we're not the first and last to bring up this privacy thing. So perhaps they're already doing it, but to Bernie's point, maybe they are, and then they're not, and it cost us double the amount, or, there's a 25-cent extra per thing, or they make it, they try to force you into doing it the other way because they'd rather have it. So we're just going to look and see what they have, and perhaps, it is what it is.
One more just addition, thanks, Chris. That there's also like this company called Streetlight Data that does it with mobile phones. Like, it takes your mobile phone and it figures out where you are, and it looks at travel patterns, and it anonymizes the whole thing. So utilizing that sort of kind of privacy laws, which MassDOT it works with Streetlight Data. So we can probably figure out how to handle the privacy issues. I think we can get through that all. Thank you.
That you basically said kind of what I was getting at, just way more articulately.
Oh, really? I thought I kind of liked a bunch, but thank you.
So in terms of going through the presentation to the select board, just knowing that we, heard everybody talk about their availability. So it sounds like the committee at large is hoping to attend this meeting. I think handling it in a similar format to what we just did on the public forum. It's probably a good way to break it up, because it's going to be longer now that we're going through line by line, street by street. So that was what I would propose.
And like I
Yeah.
mentioned, I can do the kiosk thing, or work with Julie, or
The problem there, Chris, is that the kiosk is in both lots, and so I don't know that you can make that presentation.
I like where your head's at.
Yeah, I mean, I
Liz.
don't, personally, I could give a flying fig, but
Yes.
I know you've been trying to be careful about that, so we don't want to
I
put you in
think,
a
how about
position.
this? I'll review it just for my own, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, obviously, but
Pass
yeah,
it-
I don't think you should be
pass
the one
it on,
presenting
and
it, though.
I'll just, yeah. Yep, but no, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, so I think the heroic Andrew and Julie were going to be making some revisions and maybe sending out a draft at some point for us to provide feedback. Is that a reasonable summary of what is happening?
Yep.
And then Bernie, why don't we, since we can't communicate as a collective in a non-open meeting law way, how about folks send in to Andrew and or Julie if there's a section that you're like, I want to present that section now, or it's really my dream to talk about nothing but Gould Street, or please don't make me talk publicly, any of that. But anybody on the committee who has a burning desire to bring this thing across the finish line, this is your day. This is your moment to shine.
Good idea.
I don't want to talk publicly, Liz. Thank you.
Too late, my friend. Too late.
So Tom is interested in trying to get a representative from a kiosk company to join on a Zoom meeting. I just want to put that out there for consideration.
Yeah, that's why I think then we have to advertise a meeting, right? Because we're all going to be present. We'd have to have be public access. And we'd have to schedule another meeting.
Only if it's more than 3 of us, right? So,
You know, I can try to coordinate something with like a vendor and invite a couple of you who are interested to join me. That's another way.
That sounds like a great solution.
I'd
Happy
be-
subcommittee.
Except we have to be careful
We
about
can
that.
distribute their,
don't say
Not a
that.
subcommittee, a loosely, spontaneously gathered, random collection of not many people.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe there's a good video out there too.
Can you meet with them and record the meeting on Zoom and share it with the, with us?
I don't know if I could do that.
but you can still send us all their material, right? You can still
Yeah.
send the details of their contracts, their maintenance, maintenance schedule and so on and so forth. We can always, at the very least, you should do that. And then we can, if we have questions, we can come back to you with them and get some answers.
What are you gonna have them send? I didn't think we're gonna be reviewing maintenance contracts and things like that. We're gonna be reviewing how to use it. Like, am I?
Yeah, but
am
we
I
have to,
hearing something?
again, if we're recommending a $100,000 expenditure, we should understand what we're recommending to town meeting. They're gonna have questions about what's the town signing up for? Is it gonna be this much or is it gonna be that much? Is it gonna be this much if you hand over license plate data, or is it gonna be that much if you don't? And people
It
probably
makes
wanna know
sense
that.
because the maintenance, might be 10 grand a year, and 3 years, that's 30 grand, and we just, like, that has to count. So it does serve a purpose. I can see that.
I'll get as much information as I can for all of you.
That sounds
About every aspect of
eminently
everything.
reasonable. About everything
then-
related to kiosks. Find out what colors we can get the casing in.
Of course, of course. And then maybe Tom can just join me on the call, since this is the second or third time he's mentioned it. If that sounds reasonable to all you, so we don't have to have another public meeting and we don't accidentally create a subcommittee.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Send me the details on that meeting, and if I can join, I will.
Then we
Julie,
might get
I'll
into
call-
subcommittee
I'll make
territory.
it, Julie, anytime
Okay.
that you can make the meeting, I'll be there.
Okay, sounds good.
You just got a stable little quorum, right?
No, there's a whole separate subcommittee problem that I'm not 100% familiar with, but I'll have to look into. But I want to just make sure we avoid that by accident.
It probably has to do with deliberation, and then someone will accidentally say something, and that's the end of it.
I don't know if it's just 2 of you or if it depends on how big you are. So I can find out about that.
Or just Tom can meet with you and report back.
Right.
Good
Sounds
with that.
good.
I think we should get Tom's face on the side of the kiosk. You know what I mean?
I'll definitely lose business, Chris.
You're gonna be our
I
lead,
second that motion, Chris. I'm
All right.
fully there for it.
he's
I'm
gonna be
in
our
favor.
lead trainer. He's gonna be sitting out in CVS lot,
Oh, my God.
as
Yes.
happy as can be. I will buy you the coffee.
Well, I'll get you a stool. We can make a Seinfeld episode about this, Tom. We got this.
Listen, does everybody know who Bill Brown is in town meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
it would be hard not to.
Okay, I'm gonna sign in as Bill Brown from now on.
There's so much to say, Tom, in so little time. So
I know. Don't
Right,
lose
anything
that
else we need
sense of
to,
humor.
anything else we need to review?
Bill Brown is famous for adjournment as well, though.
Nice segue.
Very good. I'll move to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Sounds good.
Any opposed?
Yep.
Thank you all for all your
Thank you,
hard work,
guys.
and ideas and
Thank you.
dedication and humor.
All right,
Yes, it is.
thanks, everybody.
I can tell that.
Thank you.
Have a good
Have a good
night.
night, everyone.
Night.
Drive safely.